My name is Abigail McDonnell and I have been a Shona.ie ambassador for the past 4 years now. This month is like my 4th year anniversary, so I'm delighted to be here to talk today a little bit about my journey and a little bit about mental health in general. So to give a bit of background to me, I am a mental health advocate and I have been so for 4 years now. Same time as my Shona.ie journey began, I became a mental health advocate, kind of in my own right. That kind of started with my own experience with mental health and mental illness. So I'll tell you a little bit of that now. So when I was about 17 years old, I would have been in 5th year college. I was diagnosed with severe anxiety and depression. And where that kind of started from, I started noticing that I wasn't really myself anymore. I was a very happy-go-lucky kid. I was a stage school kid. I loved dancing, drama, singing. I was always kind of the one in the group making jokes and like being silly and funny and being hyper and that sort of thing, and making jokes with the teacher. So I started to notice that I wasn't really feeling like myself and I wasn't kind of laughing as much, and it took a little bit more energy to kind of be in school and be that funny one and put on that mask and still be that person. And I remember being in an SPHE class and we were talking about kind of mental illness and depression and all that sort of thing. And I got in the car with my mom after school and just like burst into tears and was like, I think this is happening to me. I'm not feeling like myself and I'm sad a lot of the time. So that led to me being diagnosed with severe anxiety and depression. From there, it was really, really difficult, I would have a panic attack almost every day trying to go into school because I was so nervous that I would break down in front of everyone, or I would need to run out of a classroom and leave, or people would see me crying and laugh at me, It was really difficult. I would have to go off in the car nearly every day with my mom for her to try and calm me down, and then end up just not going into school at all because I was so drained from everything happening to me. So from about 5th year Christmas time until the end of 5th year, I missed maybe 60 days of school. I didn't do my 5th year exams. Rarely, I don't think I even did do a full week of school in that time. It was really, really difficult, and I genuinely did not think I would make it to the age of 18. I just knew that wasn't going to happen. It was inevitable in my mind. And it was a really, really, really scary, dark time for me. I didn't know what was happening. I was so worried all the time, and just low and hopeless. Luckily, I was able to go to cognitive behavioural therapy. And I say luckily because I know that not everyone can get to those type of services. So I'm very, very blessed that I was able to get there. And I started to understand the logic of my mind, For so long I was thinking, why is this happening to me? Why? Like, this is good in my life, this is good in my life, this is good in my life, and this shouldn't be happening. And going to CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, made me understand that I was suffering from an illness. I was sick. I was really, really sick, and it was no different from someone suffering from a physical illness. I always say that when I used to go into school, I used to tell people that I had a physical illness or make up another excuse for why I was missing class. Apart from my immediate friends, no one else really knew. I would say to people, I had a stomach bug, or I had to go to the dentist, or, I just needed some time off with, something happened with my family, or I need to do this, need to do that. I would never say that, I had to stay at home because I had a panic attack, or I couldn't come into school this week because I was depressed. Because no one talked about it. Absolutely no one talked about it. To be honest, a lot of the stigma that I faced came from myself because I was so worried of what people would think. I never really said it to someone to see if that stigma would come back to me, but I was so worried about that I just didn't try. So I went to CBT, started to understand the logic behind my mental illness, that my behaviours are attached to my actions and my feelings and emotions, and there are ways that I can kind of learn to cope and live. So I did. I made it through 5th year, made it past 18, made it to my leaving cert somehow. 6th year was still really, really hard, but I made it there. And then somehow got into college. I got into DCU, and I remember getting an email one day from an organisation who's actually no longer around, but they were connected to See Change, and they were looking for ambassadors for mental health and people who wanted to share their story. And I just thought, you know what? Let's turn this horrible, negative experience into something good, and let's put it to good use. And if it helps, that cliche, if it helps one person, amazing, that's my job, you know. So I signed up, and I've never ever looked back. I've been telling my story to whoever will listen, and it's been a huge kind of therapeutic time for me, being able to share my story to so many, and to hear people coming up and saying, I you know, I'm the same, I can completely relate, thank you so much for sharing your story, and people I would never ever expect to hear that from. So that just comes to the point of, you never know what people are going through. And it's only since I started to share my story that I truly understand that, because I have people coming up to me saying, I've been going through the same, and I've been able to tell anyone, and thank you so much, you know. You never know what people are going through. You know, I still have really, really hard days. Really, really hard days. Some days I don't want to get out of bed. Some days I'm full of energy and it's amazing. And that's kind of the important thing to remember, is that each day is so, so different. You know, I had a really bad day a couple of weeks ago, and I felt so hopeless. I felt like, gosh, there's no point doing anything. You know, we're in a lockdown, we're in a pandemic, there's no point even getting out of bed. And I felt really, really down on myself, really down. And the next day, I was a completely new person, and nothing had changed. It was literally just kind of the way my mind was set that day. And that's why it's so important to stay around to the next day, because you never know what that's going to bring. It's going to bring new energy, new opportunity, new everything. You know, nothing is permanent. Everything is temporary. So if you're having a bad day, that's temporary. It's going to change. This too shall pass. One thing that I kind of always talk about when I'm talking about my mental health journey is kind of the relationship with my family. Because, you know, when you have a mental illness, yes, it affects you probably the most, in the most drastic way, but it also kind of affects the people around you. Not to your fault. You're sick, you're going through something, but it does affect the people around you. You know, my mom and my sister and my dad, they had a really hard time because they didn't know what was going on, and they wanted to protect me. It was, oh, my baby is sick, my baby is ill, and we don't know what to do. So I'm going to bring in my mom to talk a little bit about what she felt like she was going through, because that story is equally as important. And since coming through that, my mom has actually started something to help other parents and other people indirectly affected by mental health difficulties. That's the position she was in too. So I'm going to put in a little clip here of a little kind of interview with my mom, and we'll get back to it.
Hi.
Who are you?
Cliodhna McDonnell. Abigail McDonnell is my daughter.
What did you feel like when I was diagnosed with my mental illness?
I was heartbroken. It's very difficult for a parent to see their child going through so much pain, and not being able to do anything about it. You can't even turn to other people and chat to other people, because you don't know what's wrong. You know.
Well, you couldn't then because no one was talking about it.
Yeah, no one was talking about it, but also it comes from the stigma the parents hold. I'm a failure. I've done wrong. It must be something I've done. Because a lot of the therapies years and years ago was always, oh, it's your parents' fault, or whatever you've done, you know. So I think that could have been nearly worse, was the fear of being the failure.
The self-stigma you put on yourself.
Exactly, yeah.
How was it living with me? Because I know, like, obviously I've gone through a big realization the past few years of what was happening. What was like a day-to-day like with me?
Well, you see, I'm a bit terrified to answer that question because we've never really spoken about it, and it was really, really difficult. It was really, really heartbreaking. I suppose I'd wake up every morning and just for a split second I think, oh, it's a lovely day, everything's going to be fine. And then I'd see you walking past our bedroom door with your head down, and it was back into realisation, and it was like, oh God, oh God, oh God, I hope she's going to be okay, I hope today's going to be okay, I hope she has a good day. So it was always about that, from very early in the morning until very late at night. Is she asleep? I hope she has a good sleep tonight. It's very difficult to talk about with you.
Looking into my eyes.
Looking into your eyes. I've got tears coming to my eyes now. But it's important as well.
Yeah.
And it's important, I think, not from the very beginning, because we've always had a really good relationship. You've always spoken to me, which is great. I'm very conscious working with parents. A lot of them, their children don't speak to them. And I always think, what would have happened if that was me? So I count myself very lucky, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful that you felt that you could come and talk to me. I remember we were talking about 3 years ago when you were in Spain that we would have this conversation, and I just kept putting it off. And I think I kept putting it off because even though you have your coping mechanisms, you can cope. I'm your mother. I'm still looking at you saying, I hope she doesn't get upset. I hope things don't hurt. You know, so I'm always conscious of making sure that you're okay.
That comes with the territory, yeah.
It does.
Did you neglect your own self-care and well-being and kind of just all-round wellness when I was ill?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also include in that your fathers and your sisters. Reason being that you were our main focus. Your sister kept you normal. Your father made you laugh. And your mummy was your therapist, which she wasn't your therapist. But I was there to listen, and you know, so we all had our different roles, but the focus was always around you, which it should be, but I think if I had more of an understanding of what you were going through, especially in the earlier days, I would have been able to cope better.
Yeah. I was just going to say, do you think if you put more emphasis on your own well-being and your own self-care that you would have been able to deal with the situation better?
Yes. Yes, I think that if I looked after myself, if I understood, I think the main thing was for me to understand what you were going through. And once I understood what you were going through, it got an awful lot easier.
Yeah.
It got an awful lot easier.
And did it turn from this is just kind of a teenager acting out to a different understanding? Or where did that journey come from?
You were never a teenager acting out.
Yeah.
You were never a teenager acting out. I think the thing that got to me the most was you turned around to me one day and said, I know I've got loads of friends. I know I've got a loving family. I know I have an intelligence, you know, and the worst thing for me was that you turned around and said, but I don't know why I'm like this. So it was nothing to do with outside, it was just within you. And I think that's the hardest. I could deal with anybody outside. I mean, if anybody was having a go at you or anything, I'd be the first person there, you know, but I couldn't. And a parent likes to kind of, I don't want to say control, but likes to be
involved.
Yeah, and likes to know that they have the ability to make things okay. And when you can't make things okay, that's when it gets hard.
So tell everyone at Shine a little bit now what you're doing with your own organisation, stemming from that experience.
Okay, so it was the most difficult time because I had nobody to talk to. I had no one to share an experience to. I didn't really know where to go for literature, for resources, anything like that. So it was just so much easier when I connected with one person. Just one person. I decided, myself and this other lady decided that we were going to set up a group online and try and encourage parents just to come in and talk if they wanted to talk. If they didn't want to talk and just observe with all the posts, then that was perfectly all right. They were in a non-judgmental zone. They got the information. We sourced information. It's peer support. All our information comes from everybody's experience.
So from the Facebook group, where did that go to then?
So the Facebook group was for 6 years and is still going strong. In November this year, we opened premises in Raheny where we will encourage parents, guardians and those indirectly affected by mental health difficulties to come in and use our resources. We've got a library there that offers information and support. It offers self-help journals. We also kind of wanted to take the focus off the child and kind of push it towards the carer as such, the person who was...
Well, the thing is that both roles are so important, and I think the role of the supporter is often overlooked.
Yeah.
In terms of actions and behaviours and which way you go about things.
Exactly.
So in terms of the education of people about mental health difficulties, why is that important?
Because if you don't understand what people are going through, you're not going to know what way to work with them.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the examples that I'll give you is when you used to get so tired and you'd go up to, I have to go to bed. After an hour of being up, I have to go to bed. And I could never understand it until one day you turned around to me and said, I put on an act. Every day, once I come out of my bedroom, I put on an act, and I try and I build myself up and I push myself to keep going. And then I'm exhausted. So then after that, it didn't bother me that you were going to bed. I'd even say to you sometimes, go and have a sleep. You know?
You still do, yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's just something like that. These are things that I have learnt. But it's taken me 5 years, 6 years to learn them. I want parents to be able to, once they find out that their child has anxiety, depression, whatever diagnosis they get, I want them to be able to understand it from the get-go.
What's the name of the organisation?
The name. The organisation is called Doing the Best We Can, because as supporters, carers, parents, guardians, brothers, sisters, we are doing the best we can for our loved ones, for the people who are going through a journey that is going to be difficult. No, I'm just so grateful that I've actually had this opportunity to talk to you, Abigail, about this, and to let you know how proud we all are of you. And you know, you are the one who's given me a different goal in life because of your journey, and I just want to say thank you and I love you. You can't.
Bye. We're friends. From the kind of points of my mom there, it's really important to remember that when you're talking about mental health, you don't have to have all the answers. And if you're kind of nervous to start a conversation with someone, that's okay. Just remember that you don't have to be someone's therapist or a psychiatrist or a counsellor. You don't have to be that person, an expert in mental health, to help someone. A lot of the time people just want to be heard, and for someone to say your feelings are valid. Every person in their journey, their mental health is their priority. Whether that be me, a few years ago, suffering, or my mom who's taking care of me, both of our mental health is our priorities there. It comes to that kind of anecdote of that when you're in a plane and the oxygen mask drops, you have to put your own oxygen mask on first before helping someone else. You need to make sure that your cup is full before giving to anyone else. And that's really, really important, especially if you have a friend maybe who's suffering right now. Yes, you can be there to support them, you can be there to listen and help and just be there for them, but you need to make sure that you're doing okay as well. And there's lots of little steps that you can look up with self-care, coping mechanisms, time for yourself. There's lots of things you can do, but it's really, really important that you always look after yourself first and foremost, because if you don't, you won't have the energy to look after anyone else. I have a podcast called the Sea Change Sessions with Sea Change, and I always end my episodes with a message of hope, because I think when we're talking about mental health, it can be quite draining for a lot of people. You know, you could be listening to it and say, oh gosh, I can kind of relate to that. And that can be a little bit nerve-wracking for a lot of people. It's important to end a message on a positive, light, hopeful note. So my message of hope to you all listening at the Shine Festival today is that this too shall pass. This is something that my mom said to me when I was younger and really, really suffering. And I really didn't think the bad times will end, but they did. Another kind of message that she used to say to me when I was actually on Erasmus, I was in Spain, and I couldn't see myself getting through a class. I was like, I need to run out and cry. I can't do it. I need to get out and scream and shout and get this energy out, because I was going to have a panic attack probably. But she said to me, she actually texting me, and she said, can you get through the next 60 seconds? And I said, yeah, of course I can. It's 60 seconds. Of course I can get through the next 60 seconds. She said, okay, good. Then can you get through the next 60 seconds after that? And I was like, yeah, I can. No matter how slow you need to take it, do it whatever way works for you. If you need to take it 60 seconds by 60 seconds, that is okay. Sometimes days can be overwhelming. Take it day by day. Sometimes that's a little bit too much for us. If you need to take it hour by hour, minute by minute, second by second, that's okay. That is valid. And you're doing what you need to do to look after yourself. I would encourage you, kind of coming from this conversation, to maybe try and be a little bit more open with your conversation surrounding mental health. Maybe do a little bit of research on stigma, what not to say and what to say. You know, try and avoid using words like crazy, psycho as adjectives, you know. Opening up the conversation about mental health is one of the most important things we can do, because it's going to allow people to come forward and say they need help, or allow people to come forward and say they're not doing so well. I love life. I really do. And even though I have really, really bad days, I'm so glad I stuck around to see what life was going to bring to me. And I'm so happy to be a Shona.ie ambassador. Thank you so much, guys, for listening to me today. If you want to find out a little bit more about me, you can go on my Instagram @alittlegale. If you want to find out about more of my mom's work, you can go to @doingthebestwecan_. In the words of the amazing Sarah Doyle, the Better Life Coach, you are enough, strong, you're independent. Get those positive affirmations in. This too shall pass. And always, always stick around for that next day, because you never know what will come.